Hi, geography students. This is Mrs. T. We are in week 9, and this is a continuation of the Identity and Cultural Landscapes unit. So last week we just got under our belts the necessary concepts related to some of the factors of cultural identity. And today, in this first of probably 3 short videos that we're going to have together this week, we're going to look at some of the maps that are shown in our textbook, chapter 5 of our textbook. These maps are coming from the 11th edition of the textbook. The same appear in the 12th edition, so whichever one you happen to have in chapter 5. So why do these ethnic, racial, sex, gender categories matter in geography? Well, they matter because of economic factors, environmental factors, social policy factors, urban planning factors, school funding factors. They matter on a number of levels because of social stratification that exists in our society and around the world. Now, what I'm going to do in this particular lesson with you is look at a map of Milwaukee, Illinois. So it is up here, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, excuse me, goodness gracious. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it is up here on the screen behind me, and then we'll also look at Baltimore and Chicago. But what the overarching factor is, let me switch over here to my Word document for just a second. One of the words that I said pretty quickly a minute ago in the introduction is social stratification, and this basically means that people, categories of people, large categories of people, such as a racial group, such as an ethnic group, such as an economic income level, education level of a group. Large categories of people are ranked based on many of those factors that I just rattled off, many of the factors that we're studying in this particular unit. So people are ranked based on, in the United States, primarily we look at what their occupation is, what their income level is based on that occupation, what their education level is that they have to have for that occupation. But we also look at factors of ethnic identity, such as your ethnicity, your ethnic group, your racial category, your sex category, your sexuality, your gender can affect, your gender identity can affect your ability to move or be recognized within the social institution called social stratification. And so in geography, we can look at the urban landscape. At least we're going to begin by looking at urban landscapes such as this one of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and then Chicago, Illinois, and then also Baltimore, Maryland. And we can look at the breakdown of the areas of the city, and we can ask why of where do these folks live and congregate in these particular places. And there's a concept in chapter 5 in the 11th edition or the 12th edition of the text that talks about residential segregation. Now, we've mentioned it in previous lectures, but residential segregation is the degree of separateness where one racial category, ethnic category, religious category, any of these different identity markers where people tend to congregate and live. Now, this is not always of their own volition. Volition is a good college level word that you need in your vocabulary. Volition means of their own free will. Many times, areas of the urban landscape have different property values, and if you are from an oppressed or depressed economic category of people, then your monetary resources are not plentiful enough for you to take your pick of locations around your cityscape. Therefore, historic places that are known as a place where this racial group or this ethnic group resides become over time ingrained in a person's identity. The place with which we are most familiar becomes part of our Well, comfort zone. I'm sure that you, if you can reflect on your own attitudes, your own ideas, and patterns of daily movement within your different image, the image map that you have and that you use on your weekly schedule, there are certain places where you are very familiar and you feel very comfortable going by yourself. There's other places where perhaps you're less familiar and you would feel better if you had someone else with whom you identified in order to go into that area. So I know that I'm like that. I just asked my husband the other day, I want to go to this store or over here, but I don't know this area very well. Will you go with me? I mean, I found myself doing that, and it's because of the location that's outside of my general sphere of travel. So these different areas of town can become historically identified with certain racial groups, ethnic groups, economic income level groups, and then as people migrate in and out through a series of succession, here's a vocabulary word from our chapter, succession, which I believe we first learned about in chapter 1. But succession occurs when new people moving into the area take up residence in a low income area, and the residents that are existing there move to maybe the periphery or move into different areas, and you see different oppressed or other groups, otherness or identifying against otherness taking over certain areas. For instance, I mentioned the Southwest Little Rock area is the heart of the Hispanic community in Little Rock. It's become known as that. It used to be a predominantly African American area. And a good friend of mine who happens to be African American, who lives very close to a Walmart store over on Baseline Road in Southwest Little Rock. Some of you might know where I'm talking about. She lives very close there, used to shop there all the time. But I didn't say anything to her when she said this. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. I didn't say anything to her when she said, I don't go to that store anymore because there's too many Mexicans there, she said. There's so many problems with that statement that I just decided, we're going to just continue to have our friendly conversation, and I can just kind of make a mental note about this person's attitude regarding different races and ethnicities. We can start out with just the word Mexican. Not everyone who is Latinx in origin is from Mexico, but that's a different soapbox that we're not going to get on today. But that one statement reminded me of the process of succession, where lower income, affordable areas of town typically are taken over by new immigrant groups as they move into the area, and it forces out, or maybe willingly allows, the folks who pre-existed to move to new areas. And so we see that with step migration patterns across an urban landscape. So for just a second, before I run out of time, actually, because I am using this Screencast-O-Matic program for our video today, and I'm limited to 15 minutes. So I don't know how I'm going to get everything in for this 15 minutes, but I will be doing multiple videos this week. So at least 3, I'm guessing. Okay, so let's look at Milwaukee, Wisconsin for just a second, and here's Lake Michigan. I don't know if any of you have been able to travel much to the Great Lakes area, but they're called lakes. But if you happen to go to the border here at all, or to the shoreline at all, it seems much more like an ocean, except it's not saltwater, than any kind of lake I've ever been to before, because you can't see to the other side, and there's big waves and white caps and all this kind of stuff. So it seems much more like an ocean front kind of property. And so most, unless it's an industrial port area that is needed for shipping goods and imports and exports, typically shorelines are very high dollar property because of the nature that they give, the vistas that they provide. And so if we look at this percent African American by census tract, in the dark green areas, there's over 80% African Americans congregated in this central Milwaukee location, north and central Milwaukee location. So all of these green colors show, according to census data that's collected, legally collected once every 10 years, please always participate in the census when that time rolls around again. And if you haven't done it in the year 2020, this is the census year. If you haven't already done it, I'm not just going to hound you about getting out to vote, but I'm going to hound you about filling out your census information. It's through that kind of information that we get these distribution maps of different cities. And through these maps, we can see, and throughout the rest of the chapter, I'm not going to show them to you in this particular video, but we can look at other social factors that are usually considered essential to social mobility, such as education. Since school funding is provided through property values and property taxes, when you see low income areas of town serving predominantly one racial category or ethnic category or religious category compared to others, and it's a depressed property value area, then by the school funding formula itself, you have fewer resources, far fewer resources, monetary and otherwise, in the school infrastructure that's available to serve these communities. So you hear some politicians talk about in the 1960s and 70s and 80s and 90s when busing from one side of the town to the other side of the town and from here to there started to try to correct. And that cyclical migration pattern where in the morning you'd catch a bus at 6 a.m. to go to a school that started at 8:30 way over here and vice versa. And so that was trying to even out the playing field, kind of reduce that social stratification regarding racial or ethnic segregation and school achievement, because it's seen as a significant marker of upward social mobility. So let me show you one more. Let me see, is this, yes, this is Baltimore, Maryland. And this shows a distribution of, here's over 10% is the dark purple, of Hispanic Latino residential segregation in Baltimore, Maryland, and Asian Pacific Islander in Baltimore, Maryland. So you see that these dark areas on the map are where you have more than 10% of the population who lives in those districts represents those ethnic groups. So these are ethnic groups, not racial groups. The previous map I was showing you was a racial and ethnic group, since African American is an ethnic name that applies to the race Black who are residents of the United States. So this is an ethnic group, not necessarily residents of the United States, but over time, why do certain neighborhoods become associated with certain types of food, certain types of markets, certain types of religious services, certain types of events in general? It is because if this is your community area, then this is where your community plays, eats, visits, congregates, and does all of their free time of interest and most of their work also. There might be some cyclical migration out of here to some other area of town to work, maybe building over here and then back over here, maybe construction work over here and back over here, maybe grocery store here and back over here, wherever you work, a bank here and back over here. So there might be some travel outside this general district. However, not only do the people who live in this area come to identify it or come to internalize it as part of their cultural identity, but others who identify against the ethnicity can either use it as this mental boundary or this idea, if I want to partake in this particular type of ethnic or cultural activity, this is the zone associated with that. So when we look at the way ethnicities are segregated, residential segregation, also work segregation, and the cyclical or even step migration that happens through a period of succession or regentrification of an area. Again, the word succession and regentrification we covered in earlier lectures this semester, so I'm not going to stop and give you the definition of it now, but please make note of how many times I've repeated those in this lecture, so so that you can be aware that it's part of the information you need to take with you from this week. So we will look at some more maps in a future video, and thank you for your attention with this. Text me with questions. Bye for now.